All right, in this video, we are going to talk about assignment 4 and give a couple of examples of the first couple problems in there. Okay, so what you want to do in assignment 4 is to write it says the directions for numbers 1 and 2 on assignment 4 say, write a method to calculate the mathematical function, okay? So f of x. All right, so what you want to do is to write this in its own method, okay? So don't put it in the main method, right? This calculation is going to be done in a separate method. If you don't know what a method is, then you probably need to go and read the content, right? But this is the main method here. So there's some references in the content, a video about how to create new methods in there. So if you don't recognize that word at all, you need to go back and take a look at that. All right, so to add another method in your class, right, you want to do it inside the class body. So in between, right, these two curly braces, but outside of any other method. So here in the main method, you don't want to put your other method inside your new method inside the main method. So it needs to be outside of this main method, but still inside the class body right here. So I'm going to go and put it right here. And what you would do is start typing out the method header. So for right now, our method header is going to be public and static. So just go ahead and put those in there. And then we'll need to decide about the return type. So far, the main method, right, is always void type, meaning that there is no output, right? Methods are a lot like functions that you see in algebra class. They can have inputs and they can have outputs as well. All right, and so it's no coincidence that this these first couple problems are about writing math functions in terms of methods, because that's essentially where that concept comes from. And you can even see it with these parentheses right here, right? How methods always have parentheses surrounding the input values. All right, so what we need to do is to decide what the output is going to be. And it's you probably need to choose either int, double, or string. It looks like on most of these, although one looks like it might be void. So let's say on this one, right, we have to kind of decide what the output would be. It's from math class, right? So we would be plugging in numbers into this, and then the output would also be a number. So that right there tells us it's either going to be int or double. Since we are using the square root right here, most of the time when you take the square root of a number, it's going to come out to be a decimal number, right? So this one should be double, so the return type. So what that again is telling Java is that the output, the things that are output by this method, are going to be doubles in value, so decimal numbers, okay? All right, then give your function a name. And so it doesn't really matter what it is. I'm going to call this one part 1. And then come the parentheses, right, at the end of the method header. Inside the parentheses, right, you need to tell Java what the parameters are. And the parameters are essentially the things that the method needs, the pieces of information that the method needs to calculate a value. So in this case, right, we are going to calculate this value right here, and you can almost see it right there. All I need, right, is this one piece of information. If I'm going to plug a number in for x, I need to know what that is. So you need to put that in parentheses here. The only thing is that when you put that parameter in here in Java, not only do you have to give it a name, so I give it the name x, but you also have to tell Java what the type is. In math class, right, it's just assumed, hey, that's numbers. You're plugging numbers in. What else would it be, right? But in Java, it could be numbers. It could also be words like a string, right, or a Boolean, or a bunch of other things. Okay, so you have to tell Java the type. All right, so that is the method header, right? And so notice how that kind of mimics, right, this part of the function notation. In fact, I could call this f if I felt like it. I'm just going to call it part 1, so that's fine. All right, and then you're going to need those. Let's see, it doesn't like something here. Let's see what that says. Okay, I just probably, because maybe I haven't finished it. All right, so, okay, yeah, because I don't have a return value yet. All right, so next thing, right, to do is inside the method body, inside these curly braces here, I am going to make this calculation that I'm going to do. All right, so I'm going to type it out as a variable, right, and then int result, and you don't have to do it this way, but it's one way to do it. It's similar to what we were doing before, so hopefully that makes it a little bit similar. You remember doing this in the previous assignments. All right, so I'm going to declare a variable called result of type double, and over here on the right hand side I am going to put this calculation of this formula right here. All right, so it is square root, right? So in Java that would be math.sqrt. And then inside these parentheses, right, I need to put what I am going to be taking the square root of, okay? And so again, looking back at the formula is 2 times x to the 4th power. All right, so that is going to be 2 times, all right, and then in Java there is no exponentiation operator, right? So you have to use math.pow. All right, so math.pow, and then it's x, right, is the formula. And we are raising it to the 4th power. So that's going to go in the second spot there. And then plus. All right, and then it's 3 times e to the x. So 3 times, and e to the x, there's a couple ways you can do that, but it has its own built-in function, which is math.exp. All right, and it's just x in the exponent, so that goes right here. Okay, so I've calculated the result out. Okay, so remember when we run this program, right? What's going to happen is that it's going to run all of the statements in the main method, right? And it won't necessarily run a method when you do that, when you run it, okay? So one of the things that you're going to have to do is to send information back, right, to other methods, and you would do that via the return statement, right? So here I am sending back wherever this method was initiated, wherever it was started. I'm going to send back to that point the result of this calculation. So I'm going to have this return statement at the very end of the method, and it's going to return the result of this calculation. Okay. All right, and now you can see it will finally compile. All right, so no errors or problems in here. When I go to run it, right, you're going to see that absolutely nothing happens here. Let's see. All right, so if you look in the console, it's completely blank. Nothing happens. So it's really hard to tell if anything is going on. In fact, nothing is going on in here. What happens is that when you run this, right, when you call this, it will do all of the statements in the main method. If you look, right, there are no statements in the main method. So you might put, you might think it's doing this calculation, but it's absolutely not doing it. Just because you have a method in your class does not mean that that code will get executed, right? What you have to do is specifically tell Java, hey, I want you to go and run this method, okay? So I want to go run this method, then I'm going to call this method. So how do I call this method? Just like you call somebody, right? You call their name. So the name of this method is part1. So I would put part1 and then open and close parentheses, right? And you're going to see, right, that it has some issue with this. Hey, there's a problem, okay? When you go look at the problem, let's see if I can get it to show up in here. All right, so it doesn't show the problem here yet, but if you click on this little X right here, you can see it says, hey, if you look over here, it has some suggestions, right, about what you can do to fix this. It's very small. It might be really hard to see, but it says add argument to match part1 double. So the issue here, right, is that you can see that in the method header, right, there is one parameter. There's one thing in here. So I have to give this a value, right, so that it will be able to make this calculation, right? It's like, imagine if I told you, I gave you a math test right now and I said, hey, plug the number into this function, okay? And you'd be going, well, what number are you talking about? I have no idea what number you want me to plug in here. And that's sort of the situation here, right? Here, in order for Java to be able to do this method, it has to know what the value of x is. So up here, when you call the method, when you tell Java, hey, go do that method, I also have to tell Java, hey, here's the number that I want you to plug in. All right, and now you can see, right, that that error is gone, okay? So for every parameter that you have in this parameter list, you're going to have to give it some value. So now I can run it. And you can see it looks like still nothing is happening, right? Something actually is happening in this case, right? But you can't see it. So what you want to do is, just so that you can see it, right, just put this in a println statement. And then you can see what happens a little bit better, all right? So I'm going to run it now. And now I get a number, right, from part1, all right? So understanding what is going on here is absolutely critical, okay? So let's take a closer look at this. So let me get to where I can draw on this. Okay, so when this program is started, what happens, right, is that Java will begin at the main method and it will do every single one of these statements in the main method in the order in which they appear, right? So here it's Java goes, okay, here's the main method. So I'm going to be printing some stuff out. What am I going to be printing out, right? And then Java sees this and goes, oh, part1 0, okay? So what happens, that is a method call. How you can tell it's a method call is because there are some parentheses here, right, with some things inside potentially. In fact, there's a 0 inside. So what happens here is that this 0, right, gets sent down into this variable x right here. All right, so that 0 gets sent right here. So everywhere there's an x, right, in this method, it will be inserting the value of 0. So right here, there's a 0 here, right, and a 0 here. So Java puts zeros in there and calculates that out. All right, so if you make that calculation, just doing the math really quickly, 0 to the 4th power is 0, right? And then 3 times e to the 0. E to the 0 is 1, and don't worry if you don't know the math too well, but e to the 0 is 1. And then so 3 times 1 is 3, and then 3 plus 0 is 3. So inside the square root, what we've got is math.square root of 3. Okay? And so that is going and getting stored in this variable result, right? So, and the square root of 3 is this number down here. It was 1.73. And if you don't believe me, I can do it up here, right? Just like on this one, if I do f of 0, I get 1.73. See, that's that number there. All right. So we have that number. Result now is this number 1.73. I'm going to just write 1.73 instead of all these decimals because it's hard to write with the mouse. So now it hits this return statement. When that return statement gets hit, that means the method is over. It is going to go back to where it was called from, which is up here in line 6. Not only that, it is going to take this number, right, and send it back. That's what the return statement does. It sends it back here, right, all the way back up here. And this whole thing, whole method call, where you call the method, now gets replaced with this number, 1.73, like so. All right, and so it's going to do system.out.println 1.73, and that's why we're getting this thing printed out right here. All right, like I said, moving forward is absolutely critical that you understand this connection, right? So this is the parameter list. This is basically like the front door, the entrance, right, to this method. And you're going to have numbers that move in here, right, through these parameters. That's how data comes in. It's the entrance to the method. Then some stuff's going to take place inside the method body, right? And then the return statement is basically the exit. Data exits the method through that, and where does it go? It goes back to where the method call comes from. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the second example. All right. In the second example, we have this function g of xy equals 5x minus 4y, 7x plus 6y minus 2. All right, so we need to add a new method for that one. All right, so go down here. Remember, the new method needs to get added inside the class body, right? So in between these two, right, in here, but not inside any other method body. All right, so make sure that it's not that. So for right now, all of these are going to be public static. And then we need to decide what will be the return type of this, the output, the things that get returned, what will their type be? All right, and looking at this, it's a math function, so it's going to be a number, right? It's going to be, so that means it's either going to be int or double, right? And it's a fraction, right? And fractions are most likely going to be a decimal numbers. They're certainly probably not going to be whole numbers, right? So again, here we are going to return double out of here. All right, I'm just going to call it part 2. And now when I look at this method, this is a multivariable function. It has 2 things in there. And if you haven't taken, I think probably a higher level math class, Cal 3 is generally when you start looking at those, but we don't even have to worry about that. All you need to remember here is that for each one of these variables, right, you're going to have a parameter here. All right, so I'm going to have double x and double y on this. And then don't forget your curly braces, okay? All right, and then here I am going to start typing the function out. I'm just going to have double result. And again, this is just a name I made up. You can use whatever legitimate Java variable you want. All right, and here I've got a fraction in there, right? So what I'm going to do is just start off like this. I know it's going to be some top part divided by some bottom part. So I'm going to put those parentheses there. Inside these first set of parentheses, I am going to type the numerator here, 5x minus 4y. So that would be 5 times x minus 4 times y. Okay. All right, and then in the second set of parentheses, I am going to type the bottom, 7x plus 6y minus 2. So that is, in Java, it would be 7 times x plus 4 times, oops, I messed up there. So that would be 4 plus 4 times y minus 2. All right, let's see if that works out. Or if I did that correct. 7x, plus 6 minus 2, 5x minus 4. Okay, looks fine. All right, and then don't forget to return that result. Return result. All right, so now I'm getting ready to run my program. What's going to happen when I run it? Well, nothing more than what happened last time, right? Same thing. I didn't get anything new. Why is that? Well, I forgot, right, that just adding a method in there doesn't mean that that method is going to get executed, right? You have to specifically tell Java, hey, Java, go do method, do all of the statements in the method named part 2. That's called a method call, okay, or invocation. And call is easier to say, so that's what I like to call it. All right, so I'm going to make a method call. So part 2, how do you call a method? Well, just like you call somebody, right, by their name, right? The name of this method is part 2. So I call its name, hey, part 2, right? And then I put some parentheses, right? All method calls will have at least this parentheses in here. And then for every parameter in this parameter list, right, you're going to have to put some number in there to call, or a variable, okay? So in this case, right, we have one parameter here, x, which is of type double, and we have another parameter here, y, which is of type double. So when you're testing this out, just make up some values, okay? So I'm going to put 2 for the first one and 3 for the second one, okay? All right, and there's my method call. So now what's happening is that this 2 and this 3 will get sent down here to double and x, and this calculation will get made, and then the result, right, will get sent back up here to where the method was called. All right, and so now you can see I still only have one thing there, and that's because it did it, but you can't see it until you print it out. And when you print it out, then you can actually see what the value is. Now, you know, that's just for testing purposes, unless you specifically want to print out the value. In this case, right, there we go. Okay. All right, and so that's it for this one. Tomorrow I will make another video about some of the other parts, about the string parts in there, and to show you what those look like as well. Okay. All right.